Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your town librarian, Linda Kenton, and on behalf of the library, the town, and our library support groups, welcome to San Anselmo Public Library's 100th birthday. On this very night, on February 12th, 1915, a group of San Anselmo's prominent citizens and guests gathered in this place, just like all of us, to accept, dedicate this wonderful institution for the town of San Anselmo. The San Anselmo Herald, which was the newspaper at the time, recorded the event. And we, with the help of Brian Crawford, who is sitting here, developed a script of that account so that we can all experience history together. But more than that, we're here to make history tonight and to look forward to the next 100 years. And hopefully in 100 years, they'll look back and they'll look at the pictures of all of us sitting here. I've got goosebumps saying that. Look at pictures of us sitting here, and we'll have video thanks to the Drake students from Drake High School and our brochure and program, and they'll look back and experience what it was like in 2015. So thank you all for being here to be a part of history in our town. I want to especially thank the friends of the San Anselmo Public Library who have made this evening possible. They have paid entirely for this evening, from the chairs that you're all sitting in to the cake and champagne that we're going to have later. So thank you to the friends, and continue to support them. And if you don't know, they do have a used bookstore called Town Books. So take your donations there and make your shopping expeditions there. It's a very worthwhile and wonderful addition to our town. And now I think it's time to start the event the way they started it 100 years ago, which was with a popular song of the time called The Gondolier.
Come now to me, fair is the night, bright shines the stars so clear, while yonder moon gives us her light, by gondolier is near. Come thou to me, come thou to me, come thou, come to me, come thou, come to me.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out tonight. In case any of you don't know me, I'm John H. Kemp. Since last year, it has also been my honor to be the mayor of our fine town of San Anselmo. During the 7 years since the incorporation of the town, our emphasis has been on making our town the equal of any community of its size anywhere in these United States. The first major project was the construction 3 years ago of our beautiful town hall and volunteer fire station on land kindly donated by Mr. James Tunstead. That same year, the charming mission-style train station was completed. Other improvements followed. Many civic-minded groups contributed as well, putting on dramatic, literary, and musical events for the education and moral improvement of the citizens. But two elements of a flourishing community were repeatedly noted as lacking: a public hall for events, concerts, and meetings, and above all, a free public library. These concerns were taken up by a group of dedicated ladies from the Women's Improvement Club. Largely due to their able leadership and untiring efforts, we are here tonight to celebrate the successful meeting of both goals and to dedicate this beautiful building where we now sit, the San Anselmo Free Public Library. Many people contributed to this happy conclusion, most notably, of course, Mr. Andrew Carnegie, whose civic-minded generosity financed the construction of this library and nearly 1,000 others across the country. But it never would have happened without the dedication of the ladies of the Women's Improvement Club, who originated the project, kept it before the people, and in spite of many difficulties, have at last seen full fruition of their hopes in this handsome building. They held many fundraising efforts over the last 4 years and donated some $650 to the library. Of this, $350 will go for books and $300 for furniture. This new facility also could not have happened without the full support of the trustees of the town throughout the long effort. I appointed a library board to oversee the construction and management of the library, and they have given freely of their time to see that nothing was omitted that would lead to its success. And I must also congratulate the people of San Anselmo for the public support always accorded such public benefits as the schools and library. They willingly submitted to a tax of 10 cents per $100 valuation to maintain the library and pay for its staffing. We can all take immense pride in this accomplishment. A century from today, no one will remember our names in our speeches tonight, but they will continue to enjoy this library and its wonderful resources. Without further ado then, on behalf of the San Anselmo Town Board of Trustees, I take great pleasure in presenting the keys of the library to Wade F. Thomas, President of the Library Board.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As superintendent of your San Anselmo schools, you have entrusted to me the education of your sons and daughters. and I have always taken the responsibility very seriously, for these children will soon be the citizens of our town and future leaders. But education does not stop at graduation. A provincial and poorly informed electorate cannot choose their representatives wisely, nor contribute to the advancement of our society. The world's literature is like a vast pool of wisdom, of inspiring tales and models of exemplary behavior. History is rife with examples of what other cultures have essayed, and we can read the admirable or the deplorable results of their choices and guide our choices accordingly. And of course, the art, music, religion, and ideas of all nations and all the ages repose therein. A literate citizen can plunge into this wonderful pool of information and, like Ponce de Leon's magical fountain, emerge wiser and stronger. I can teach your children to read, but how can they enter the magical pool of literature without a library? It is a well-documented fact that the influences of libraries enhances the communities which possess them, increases the knowledge and sophistication of their citizens, and leads to morally uplifting lives. Now, at long last, we stand on the verge of that pool, and every citizen, without charge or fee, can plunge as deeply as he dares. This wonderful facility will only grow and improve over the coming years, thanks to the tireless exertions of the Women's Improvement Club, to whose efforts is due to a great extent the success of securing our San Anselmo Library. Thank you.
Thank you for your inspiring words, Superintendent Thomas. Now I take great pleasure in introducing another without whom this library could not have been built, the Honorable Judge William W. Morrow. Judge Morrow is one of our most illustrious citizens. He's a Civil War veteran, a former U.S. attorney, and was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives for 3 terms. He's now serving on the 9th District Federal Court of Appeals. As a trustee of the Carnegie Institution, as well as a personal friend of Mr. Andrew Carnegie, he was instrumental in securing the very generous grant of $10,000 to build the library. Judge Morrow.
Thank you, Mayor Kemp. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen of San Anselmo. As you can imagine, as a former representative, I'm accustomed to giving speeches. But on this happy occasion, I shall make no effort at great oratory. I wish only to give you some of my ideas and advice regarding books and libraries. I fully support Mr. Carnegie's interest in establishing free public libraries in as many towns across the country as possible. Mr. Carnegie's gifts pay for the buildings, but only if the towns assume responsibility for maintaining the libraries, acquiring the collections, paying the staff in perpetuity. He plants the seed, but the local community must nourish and reap the harvest. This makes perfect sense to me, and I gladly prevailed on Mr. Carnegie to grant the town's request. I agree wholeheartedly with Superintendent Thomas's statements about the value of a library to enhance the literacy, knowledge, and culture of a community. But a local library provides another invaluable service as a repository of local lore and history. Of course, there are fine libraries in San Rafael and in Mill Valley, both built by the Carnegie Trust, I might add, but they will not have anything on San Anselmo. This library is good for you people of San Anselmo alone. It should keep a complete history of all local matters, a repository for the things that make this town unique in all the world. As the years go by, the record of local matters will become ever more valuable. The pioneers that first settled this town are passing. What has not been saved will soon be irretrievable. But with this library, their voices will echo down the corridor of time. All historical matters of the Ross Valley and Marin County should be gathered, indexed, and filed. Many important historical events are wrapped up in Marin County, from the Indians who fished and hunted in this valley, to the coming of the mission, the Bear Flag Revolt, statehood, the Gold Rush, and the Civil War. All these things touched this area, and their impact should not be forgotten. Then there are the truly wonderful scenic beauties at our very doors, which have caused and will continue to cause descriptions that will live in literature as long as language is spoken. There are only a few hundred books here now, but soon the shelves will be filled. Most of you tonight brought books to donate to the library, and we thank you for your kindness. The library board will soon be purchasing many more books, but they will be the proper kind of books, well-bound books that serve to widen one's horizon and uplift one's spirit. Entirely too much time is wasted now on reading cheap books. Tales of gunslingers and pirates and princesses, romances that inflame the chaste bosoms of our daughters. I would venture to say that 90% of the books of the day are not worth reading. I recently read a report made by a committee of noted scholars who issued a list of 700 books which were all that were necessary to make one familiar with the world's best literature. While I did not concur on many of their choices, I applaud their noble goal. Those books will fill these shelves and be available to all. So in closing, I congratulate the people of San Anselmo on the public spirit shown in the effort which is responsible for this fine library. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Morrow, for your inspiring words and for your help in this fine project. Now I want to introduce the woman who was the first to propose this library and who saw it through many vicissitudes. I can truly say this library is here because of Mrs. Emma T. Foley, president of the Women's Improvement Club.
Thank you. Thank you all. Isn't this a beautiful building? It took a long time to get here, I can tell you. It started more than 4 years ago when I was having tea with my friends, Mrs. Jones and Mrs. Clemenson, and we were discussing how we could improve the town. We decided that what was most needed was a library, a repository of knowledge and local history, a source of education and entertainment for the entire community, free and available to all. We brought the idea to the club and they approved it. In fact, we learned that over 75% of the libraries in the United States were founded by women and women's clubs. Woo! Libraries are a civilizing force, we feel, and so we dreamed of a fine library packed with books and with people going in and out. The club started fundraising. We had bake sales and card parties. We held a bazaar and sold crafts that we had made. One memorable evening, we had an old-fashioned minstrel show which included old maids from 26 to 62. No widows allowed. But our funds grew with disappointing slowness. How could we buy land and build a library? We talked to the board about building a small room at the back of the town hall But even that cost twice what we had. Professor Day from the seminary suggested that we approach Mr. Carnegie, but we felt that with a population of only 1,500 citizens, that we were too small of a town to receive such a grant. We calculated that we could not ask for less than $6,000. We sought advice from Mr. Ed Manning, the town attorney, who was very kind and provided a great deal of sage advice at no expense to us. He suggested that we contact an acquaintance of his from law school, the Honorable Judge Morrow, who was personally acquainted with Mr. Carnegie. We did so, presenting our case for the library and showed him the site, and he agreed to help us. He traveled to the East Coast in December of 1913 and personally urged our grant request. He wrote to tell us that he had been successful, and without telling us, he had asked for $10,000. We can never say thank you enough to Mr. Carnegie, who sets an example to his fellows in his open philanthropy. We worked with the library board, and the first thing we did was to hire Mitchell and Hodge as architects. They saw us through the rest, a whirl of contracts, weather, mud, and thousands of decisions. Oh my, it was such an ordeal. We have hired a librarian, Miss Bessie L. Wise, who will soon be greeting you as you enter the library. I want to thank Mr. W. Garden Mitchell for his beautiful design, and Mr. Fred Fields, who realized that design with precision and true art in less than 125 days. And my thanks to Mayor Kemp and the town trustees, Superintendent Thomas, the library board, and the Honorable Judge Morrow. And of course, to all the wonderful women of the Women's Improvement Club of San Anselmo, my dear friends. None of this could have been possible without them. Now, just months after the grant was approved, we are standing here in this beautiful building, and I can't believe it's not still a dream.
Many things have changed since that night 100 years ago, while others have stayed the same. We're fortunate to be standing in the same building that those folks were in, and we're still surrounded by books. We're still a place that all people of all ages come for their intellectual, cultural, and educational needs. By all accounts, the library flourished in those early days. Initially, the collection grew through donations, and the library had a capacity for 8,000 books. The library board, which governed the library, had a budget of $350. Today, our capacity sits at 48,000 items, and with an annual materials budget of nearly $80,000. We partner with the local libraries to form Marin Net Consortium, and with Link Plus, which gives our residents access to over 12 million items. The robust magazine collection in 1915 consisted of at least 23 titles, some of which we still have on our shelves today, such as Harper's, Atlantic Monthly, National Geographic, and Sunset. The library board was responsible for acquisitions. They collected books and nothing more. There were no records, no CDs, cassettes, or movies. Today, our librarians hold master's degrees and are highly trained in the selection of all materials, print, media, and electronic. Contrary to Judge Morrow's admonitions, it appears that monies were spent on bestsellers from the beginning. We know this through newspaper reports filed monthly.
We continue that pattern today. The library keeps up with what the community wants, and in great part, that means bestsellers. There were 671 library card holders that first year out of a population of 2,475. Today, we have 8,011 cardholders with a population of 12,491.
Yay.
That is 27% for the first year, and it's grown to 64% today. The library was opened noon to 5 and 7 to 9 daily, except Sundays and holidays. That's 42 hours a week. Now we're open 46 hours a week. No story about San Anselmo is complete without mentioning floods. The waters of 1940 filled the basement by 3 feet, but there was little damage reported. Conversely, the floods of 1982 and 2005 caused severe damage. Unfortunately, those more recent floods resulted in the loss of a majority of the library's historical documents. Though we know a good amount about our history, much has been lost. However, here we are in the present, February 12th, 2015, exactly 100 years later, making history. We're in the unique position to look backward to its beginning and forward to imagine what it might become. Will we need as many bookshelves in the future? Will we provide media pods for patrons to sit in and receive any and all media available? Can we continue to be the community living room for people of all ages? Will we have enough electricity and bandwidth to power these technologies? What will story time be like in 2115? We'll find out the answers to those questions as time unfolds. It's my pleasure and privilege to reaffirm our commitment to the San Anselmo Public Library and, by extension, our residents. Our library will continue to stand not only as a monument to, but as a living and dynamic collaborator to the value our community places on knowledge, culture, entertainment, and literacy. Congratulations, and we look forward to the next 100 years.
It's my pleasure to read a poem about books called "And Yet the Books" by Czesław Miłosz, who, in addition to being a Nobel Prize winner in literature, was also a professor in English at the University of California, Berkeley, and I was a student when he was a professor, so go Bears. And yet the books. And yet the books will be there on the shelves, separate beings that appeared once still wet, as shining chestnuts under a tree in autumn, and, touched, coddled, began to live in spite of fires on the horizon, castles blown up, tribes on the march, planets in motion. We are, they said, even as their pages were being torn out, or a buzzing flame licked away their letters, so much more durable than we are, whose frail warmth cools down with memory, disperses, perishes. I imagine the earth when I am no more. Nothing happens, no loss. It's still a strange pageant. Women's dresses, dewy lilacs, a song in the valley. Yet the books will be there on the shelves, well-born, derived from people, but also from radiance heights.
All right, that brings us to the close of this part of our program. I want to thank our players up here. You all did a magnificent job. They all really honored the library and honored our past and our present and our future, so I thank you all for that. We have a guest book up at the front, so please remember to sign our guest book. And if you follow along in the program, you will see that this is a birthday party, right? And at birthday parties, we sing happy birthday, right? Right. So we have a cake coming up, and as soon as it arrives, we will all break out in song. And after that, we will be passing out champagne. So everybody stay where you are. We'll pass out the champagne for a champagne toast. And then after that, you are all free to go to the other part of the library to get cake, birthday cake, and celebrate with the rest of us. All right. So, go ahead. So you want to turn it around? Oh, okay. All right. Happy birthday to